Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Transformers Reviews. Well, today, guys, we're doing something a little bit different because we are not only taking a look at the Age of the Prime's Red Alert, we are also taking a look at the Studio Series Devastation version of Optimus Prime. And if you are noticing a little bit of a size discrepancy, no, don't worry, we will address that soon enough. However, let's go ahead and start off this video by looking at Red Alert. And here we can see the original trio of Autobots, and mainly these three guys for several episodes of Armada at the beginning were the only good guys. Now eventually Smokescreen came along and all that sort of stuff, but like I said, for the main majority of first few episodes, it was just these guys. And to have that original trio together, man, they just look excellent. I'm digging how big he is in comparison to Hotshot, also how he scales up against Optimus Prime. That looks really good. And, you know, regardless of whether it's a Legacy or an Age of the Prime's aesthetic, the fact that they tie together, but they also are like definitively Armada designs, it works perfectly. Now, one of the cool features about Red Alert is that he, much like Hotshot, does have an actual Minicon port like they used to have back in the day, which both of these ports can actually support old and new Minicons. So over here you can see that we have the new version of Jolt, which doesn't have the peg in the middle of the port. And once we actually convert him into his position that he needs to sit on Hotshot, he'll just go ahead and sit right on that port, no problem at all. However, for the old school Minicons, they did have the ports, again, that was used to activate the features. But since Red Alert doesn't have any, we're not expecting anything, so you could just plug any regular old Minicon on there if you have the old ones, and it'll work just fine. So I never had the original Red Alert figure, so I don't know what function that original Minicon port would have activated. However, I do know what this new guy does, and I'm assuming it was probably something similar to the fact of how this flips out in vehicle mode. Now, that being said, you guys can see that there's a little bit of a lip right here on the figure. That's to help kind of fill out this back section whenever it goes down like that. However, it does have the adverse effect of that you cannot actually use all of your blast effects in there because that lip does prevent some of them. Like, you could go ahead and put this long one in there, but that doesn't look right. So let's go ahead and add one that maybe, hopefully, will work a little bit better. And not exactly, because that lip is still kind of pushing up on it, but you can't tell as easily. So basically, again, only certain blast effects will work with it because of the said lip. It just depends on your personal preference in that instance. And pretty much that is it for Red Alert's vehicle mode. I mean, you've got all your standard 5mm pegs on this guy that we saw with Legacy and now obviously with the Age of the Primes guys. So yeah, the aesthetic of Red Alert, I really like how he's just a medical vehicle, but he's also a Jeep at the same time. So that's it's just a cool blending of the two things, because I'm sure there are such things as medical rescue evac Jeeps, but like, I've never seen one in real life, but the fact that this guy gives us that is really kind of cool. So no complaints for Red Alert in vehicle mode. Now we turn our attention to the Studio Series Devastation version of Optimus. Now, it is probably no secret if you've been following a lot of the boards and a lot of the YouTube videos that there has been some discussion about this Optimus Prime. Now, we will go ahead and start discussing some of those. One of those, probably my personal pick, is the feet on the back, because they are very pronounced in this vehicle mode, and they kind of remind me of the Thrilling 30 Optimus. I mean, not that bad, because that was just straight up his feet sticking out. But still, they're very pronounced, I mean, from most angles that you see them on. I do appreciate the little bit of truck detailing there on the back. That's kind of cool. Now, one of the other things that people do not like is the fact of how gappy and kind of unclean it is around the bumper, especially the headlight hands. That's just, there's no hiding it at all. It's a very kind of unclean and broken up look. But again, remember guys, this is a deluxe. However, I know that deluxes nowadays are a little bit cleaner than this is going for. Now, the other thing that people really do not like is the side profile on this truck because of all of this stuff going on right here. However, I do want to go ahead and point out one positive, that these 5mm ports, I will say you cannot access them whenever he's in robot mode, which only means they're only available to use in vehicle mode. So if you wanted to go ahead and attach a couple guns and have him being Gun Optimus Prime, you can do that. I mean, I'm not probably, well, I don't know, that kind of looks cool with those red guns, doesn't it? I was going to say I'm probably not going to do that, and more than likely won't, because he looks better in robot mode. So definitely vehicle mode is the roughest, and I think that's where most of the people have the problem with this. Maybe it's also with the energy axe, which I will say this, that I said the same thing on Motormaster, is, you know, I appreciate whenever they give us weapon storage. Most of the time, like if it's hidden away, that's perfect. But whenever it's just kind of sitting there on the back, yeah, it's not hidden away, yet at the same time it is practical. It just doesn't sit well with me whenever it's just kind of bold as brass in instances like this. So, with that being said, the other thing you probably notice on the back of this guy is this trailer hitch. So you're like, well, is there a trailer that looks good with him? So just for funnies, I wanted to see what the SS-86 Optimus Prime's trailer looks like, and I think we can all agree it is way too big for this boy. However, if we kind of go ahead and steal another Optimus Prime's trailer, like the Earthrise one, well, look at that. That seems a little bit more in proportion. And if you guys saw my end of the year list, one of them, we actually addressed how the G1 Toy Universe Optimus actually works pretty well with this trailer as well, because of these guys being like similar size and scale. And I mean, you know what? He didn't have a trailer in the game, so, you know, it's not something you see, but I did want to go ahead and point out that it is an option if you have the Earthrise Optimus Prime. And speaking of other primes, like we just saw, here he is with the G1 Toy Universe guy. And whenever you compare them nose to nose, you can see that this Devastation version, likewise being a deluxe, is probably not a surprise. They're similar in size and in height and all this sort of stuff. So there he is with that guy. But if you're kind of curious how he stacks up with the actual Earthrise dude, here he is with him. And if we kind of do the like that, you can see how they stack up. And then like this. So, I mean, you know what? It's decent. And surprisingly, I'll mention something that he has in connection with this Earthrise Optimus Prime when we get to robot mode, but that'll be here in a second. And let's go ahead and pull this guy in here just because, well, he is who he is. So again, we'll do a similar comparison. There are like that, and here you can kind of see how they stack up sideways and also at this angle here. I have to say that I don't feel that you should be putting this guy up to this guy, because it doesn't stand a chance. It's not meant to, is the point. But it is kind of cool just to see how different they are. And for some non-prime scale comparisons, here he is with Bumblebee, which you can see that obviously they are not in scale at all. But to be honest, this Bumblebee only scales with like the Studio Series guy. So, you know, because even the Earthrise guy is a little bit too small compared to how big this boy is. Which does bring to mind the other question that I have, because this Optimus Prime being the only one that we have right now, I did pre-order the other Devastation figures, which is actually going to be reusing this guy right here and this guy right here. Now, for the Jet, I think that that's actually about appropriate size in real world scale, but in the game, the Seekers were not that much bigger than Optimus Prime, yet this is the mold they're using. And again, the only Optimus Prime from Devastation we have is this deluxe scale one. So are they going to release a bigger one? Because even like our boy over here, because they remolded Runabout to be the Decepticon Ground Trooper, and you can see that that is not in scale either. Now, we'll see how everybody looks in robot mode, obviously, but for right now, it's not looking too good with the fact that both of the Decepticons that have been released for Devastation like totally dominate Optimus as far as vehicle mode scale goes. So here we can see our RoboCop inspired robot, at least in the head, finally having reached his robot mode. And I gotta say that some of the robot mode details, now that we can finally see them, I mean, they're actually pretty good. I didn't think that the original Armada toys had all that much detail. However, our boy here looks really good. Now, if you are noticing on the left arm, he does not have a left hand. Obviously, that's show accurate, but some people had kind of wondered if they were going to give him a left hand that you could swap out with other accessories. Now, when I opened this guy up, that turned out not to be the case. Now, the reason I don't have one of those attachments plugged in is the reason that I wanted to show you how neatly concealed some of this stuff is. You can see there's one accessory over there in the back part of his leg. Here's his standard weapon accessory with the little cannon bit on it, which we'll go ahead and plug that into his hand right there. And then the other one is actually in his backpack, because if you go ahead and pull up this bit right here, that's where that claw attachment is supposed to go. We're going to go ahead and set that off to the side right now. And so here you kind of have Red Alert with this standard look, that cannon bit right there, which if we go ahead and attach a blast effect, you can see that it will go ahead and just snugly fit on the end. So I'm glad that's still a thing going forward, because I have a ton of blast effects and I love photography. So there is that. However, if we go ahead and take out the other weapon that was on this part of the leg, and then if we go ahead and flip this bit out like we did in vehicle mode, we can go ahead and bring it up right here. And there was one episode of the show where he actually had this firing from over his shoulder to grab like a Minicon.
Optimus! There goes the Minicon!
So I'm kind of glad that they went ahead and included something that's like that, because it's just a small little attention to detail that this guy used in several episodes of Armada. That grappling hook, he showed his battle prowess with it.
Huh? Hang on!
And one of the gnarly things is if you wanted the cannon on his shoulder to be more of an artillery sort of thing, you can see the little tri-barrel attachment that they add. Now, since we went ahead and attached this to the cannon, since it's just on a 5mm peg, you can go ahead and do like the old school figure and have him wielding this over here like that. Now, also that cannon bit, because it will fit into that port, you can put it over here on the arm. He can rock that. So this guy, I dig the fact of how his aesthetic just looks so sick. And I mean, obviously the boy did not skip leg day. That's one thing I think about every Red Alert, at least Armada Red Alert, is that they've always kind of had like these really thick thighs just the way that they're designed. And the fact that this new Age of the Primes version kind of references just that little aesthetic detail is kind of funny, to be honest. So, how does this boy stack up with his fellow Armada figures? So, here he is alongside his leader and his fellow Autobot, Hotshot. Now, speaking of Shot, there is one thing that I did want to go ahead and bring out, is that in the show, they were actually shown to be the same size, but due to the fact of how these boys are constructed, that is one thing that is a little bit disappointing, because while Hasbro does more often than not switch over to like Deluxe and Voyager as more of an engineering price point now, as opposed to a size price point, because he is a Deluxe and he is a Voyager, it still happens to work out the way it has for ages. And so I'm a little bit disappointed in that, but you know what? It's just a minor thing. Overall, the point is, does he look good with both of these boys? And the answer is a resounding yes. So I think that not only has Red Alert met my expectations, but he slightly exceeded them, and that's perfect. So yeah, definitely I'm not regretting getting Red Alert at all. So here we can see our Devastation version of Optimus finally having reached his robot mode. Now, if you remember, I said that he had something very similar to that of the Earthrise Optimus. And the fact is that he transforms very similar to the Earthrise Optimus, but does so trying to have the aesthetic of the 86 figure. But he does both of those on a deluxe class budget. And I think that the fact that it does that is, well, it's impressive to say the least. And the fact that I think for a deluxe, it kind of succeeds in what it's aiming for. Now, like we said, he will never be able to compare to these two versions of Optimus Prime, but the thing is it does what it is set out to accomplish. Now, the only thing that does kind of disappoint me is they did the same thing with this Optimus like they do with Grimlock a lot of the times. They gave him his blaster, but they didn't give him his sword. However, in the case of Optimus, is that they gave him his axe, but they didn't give him his ion blaster, which I'm like, that's an iconic feature of Optimus Prime. However, you know who did come with two guns? Was this Optimus Prime right here. Now, he came with one that was like his toy gun, which seems appropriate for him considering the way he looks, but he also came with an animation accurate rifle, which if you wanted to, you could probably just go ahead and give this version of Optimus Prime, and there you go. Now you have an answer to that if you manage to pick up this Optimus Prime. I mean, he's letting himself borrow his own gun, so it's not like a big deal, right? But I do want to go ahead and take a moment to show off his excellent robot mode detailing. Again, there we can see the chest. Now, this is the way that his grill is supposed to come up and meet the chest area, but you can kind of see that the side bits and the chest, that's where they're supposed to be, but they don't line up necessarily clean. You can kind of see behind there that you can pretty much see through it. But the other six, like the crotch area, the upper legs, the kind of clean look with the robot mode lower legs, that's kind of awesome. Now, obviously, these wheels are kind of peeking through, but, you know, if you just kind of ignore that, it's still a very clean aesthetic. And I don't know whether these, now that they flipped over from being the 5mm ports, if they're supposed to pseudo-represent the gas tanks on his legs. I mean, if so, that's fine. But one of the other details, like with the Earthrise guy, is basically how the wheels just end up there on the back. And I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it is something that is a slight bit detracting, especially considering how the front of him looks so awesome. Now, we had mentioned how the Ion Blaster was synonymous with Optimus Prime, but the other thing that he does come with is also equally synonymous in the form of the axe. And you can kind of see some of the detailing here. And like me personally, I'm not too crazy about the trailing effect on this thing, or the fact that whenever you go ahead and plug this on his arm, that red bit just does kind of crash the illusion, which is kind of a shame, to be honest. But again, this is a deluxe class price point. We have to remember there's going to be limitations, although like we said with some other deluxe class figures that we see nowadays, they kind of smash it in some instances. Wow, I never thought I'd reach the point on my channel where I was complimenting Bumblebee over Optimus Prime. What is happening? However, how does this guy's axe stack up to others? Well, here he is with the G1 Toy Universe version of Optimus, and they look pretty good. With the axe, these boys look sick. And here he is stacked up against his Earthrise self. And I like how that looks with both these guys. Can you imagine just having all Optimus Primes that you own that have axes just standing there together? And of course, we had to do the Studio Series 86 guy. And man, I'm telling you what, this kind of looks like Optimus and the son of Optimus, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, both these Optimus Primes are doing exactly what they're supposed to, and I'm not mad about it. And here you can see all of the boys together. Optimus Primo squad up in here, getting ready to cut you into itty bitty pieces. Man, that looks kind of cool. Like, if I had like a display where it was just Optimus Primes, I could probably go ahead and put those boys in there. But, you know, certain ones wouldn't fit in. Like, if you try to put in this Optimus Prime and this boy over here, you know, from one, it kind of ruins the illusion because, like, they don't have orange axes. This guy has a blue one, but again, it would throw it off just a little bit. Now, we talked about the gun that was synonymous with Optimus, and we talked about the axe that was likewise synonymous. But what's the third item that fits that descriptor? Well, it has got to be the matrix of leadership. So if we go ahead and stack how this boy's matrix is, it's just basically molded white, which if it would focus, that would be great. You can see the details are there, but again, at this cheaper price point, it's not a big deal to go ahead and add the detail. Now, likewise, the poor man's missing link is also just solid colored, so that's something that these boys share aside from their size. Now, if we go ahead and look at the Earthrise Optimus, as we know, he does have a little bit more of a detailed matrix as compared to our boy here. And probably no shock that the Optimus from '86 also does too. And yes, they did give this Optimus Prime the ability to hold this in both of his hands because he has notches on the bottom of his hands that you basically go ahead and slide the matrix up into. And I'm like, you know what? I like the fact that he can do that because, you know, he stole Hot Rod's thunder once before whenever he fought something that was a little more crazy than Unicron, which was just a virus that made everybody act crazy. However, in regards to this figure, how do other Optimus Primes stack up to the ability to hold their matrix? Well, with this boy, because he's got rounded fists, there is no chance, so we aren't even gonna bother. However, what about the Earthrise guy? Well, here is how he has to do it. He kind of has to hold it up above his head.
Arise!
Optimus Prime. Arise, Rodimus Prime. Optimus.
And even at that point, he's more holding it with his thumbs than is actually like his 4 fingers. So not a tremendous success for the Earthrise guy. And the SS-86 does come close in the fact that he can hold it out in front of him, but because of his massive hands, he can only fit about maybe his index finger in there because it's so big and massive. He might be able to fit his middle finger in there as well, but again, not doing it as well as our boy back here. But you know who does something the most similar to this Optimus Prime? Is this one right here, because he, much like this Optimus, also has the notches to where he can hold the matrix out in front of him. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool that this Optimus Prime really does something similar, and it kind of makes these two have something in common despite the fact of how different they are. Now, the other Devastation figures that are going to be released is this mold and this one right here, which you can see that Run Amok shouldn't be anywhere near, or what will be the Ground Trooper shouldn't be anywhere near this close to Optimus in height. And the Seeker, they may have been around Optimus's height, but you can see here that Sandstorm totally dominates Optimus. So that either leaves the fact that if they're going to do more of the Devastation Autobots, they're either going to have to be smaller dudes, or they're going to have to do this Optimus Prime at a bigger scale. So, you know, I don't know where they're going to go with that. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, if you're wondering why these boys in particular have these weapons, is these are not the weapons they're going to come with, okay? His is a sword that I have never seen before. It's a little bit thicker. And I thought for this guy, because in the game, you could actually, they had a little bit of an homage to Optimus Primal in the fact that you could equip his weapons, which I thought was a cool little callback. Well, I thought, okay, for the Seeker dude, they're just going to go ahead and give him Optimus Primal's weapons that they made in Kingdom. But when you look at the weapon he has, it is very similar, but they've actually remolded it very, very slightly. But anyway, this is just to kind of show you what they might look like with weapons that will be very similar to what the actual boys come out with. But again, that doesn't address the immediate concern of what do you do as far as putting with dudes. So that leaves you either two options. Maybe you could go ahead and put in with G1 dudes that are already small, although this feels really out of scale, which maybe then it leads into third-party guys, which, you know, like I mainly stick with main Hasbro stuff. We know that on this channel we've looked at third-party stuff before. This Springer just happens to be one of the like 5 or 6 third-party guys that I have, and I think that with this Optimus, maybe this dude scales. But, you know, I'm pretty sure that if this Optimus sells successfully, they'll make more Devastation dudes. So basically, everybody, that was our look at the Age of the Primes Red Alert, along with the Studio Series Devastation Optimus. If you're looking for a recommendation between the two, I think obviously I would recommend Red Alert over Optimus Prime, but it also depends upon what your favorite iteration of Transformers is. You may not care anything about Armada. Is it just a good Autobot by himself outside of that fact? Yes. Now, the reason that you might get an Optimus, that would be up to you. If the deluxe price point, like cut corners on this thing, don't bother you, is it a decent budget-friendly Optimus Prime? Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna knock it. Like I said, robot mode, this is where this boy really, really shines. But I do feel that if I had it to do over again, I probably wouldn't buy that Optimus, now knowing what I know. However, hindsight can be a funny thing at times. And that pretty much wraps up all I have to tell you about these Valiant Autobots. And with that being said, guys, until next time, we'll see you in another review.
Optimus told me before we left that you were an awesome warrior back on Cybertron. So are you.
I have the manifolds to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. Give me the Ferrotaxis. We will use it to bring our culture and our history back to Cybertron, where it belongs. You have made a great discovery. Let us use it wisely.